There's certain neighborhoods.
I screwed up. I stopped
Yeah,
recording. But
Vancouver.
so Vancouver, yes,
Mm-hmm.
people are coming
Mm-hmm.
into Vancouver in large
Right.
numbers.
Right. It's. I mean, that's fascinating to think about how that's going for those areas and what exactly the Chinese are doing there because they're there too. That soft power. But
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to keep moving on here real quick. So besides being connected to some of these mayors in the Midwest, primarily they focus on one in Ohio, but they won't confirm his name. Obviously, there is Eric Swalwell, the House representative. And as I mentioned to you already before, he is refusing to confirm or deny that he had any relations sexually with this woman. And I like how, what is it? Quote here from the article: Fang is a Chinese national who also uses the name Fang Fang, Axios reported, while adding that it's not believed she ever obtained classified material during the operation. And I saw some media organizations saying, "Oh yeah, we have nothing to worry about. There was no classified material." Swalwell reported all this to the FBI and moved away from her. And I put a little note here in my notes. That's not the point. That's not the reason. If you are the Chinese government, that you attach a woman of this nature to an up and coming
Yeah,
politician.
yeah, no, no. She's okay. So if he was, if he was, I don't know,
If
Chris
he was
Ray.
attached,
If he
if
was
he's
Chris
attached to
Ray, that would
someone,
be the concern. If he
right,
was James Coney, that would be the concern.
right,
Um, although we could get into other concerns about those people.
hmm
Um, he is a policy maker, not a secret agent who has access to classified U.S. files about, I don't know, which Chinese air bases we would strike in the event of a conflict,
right,
right? That's the secret information you would want to get out of a, I don't know, a CIA guy or something.
right. If you get
But
your hands on him,
what you want to get uh, out of a policymaker is policy. So, which policies were lobbied for by a foreign government? I mean, this goes back to. Do I get to bring up Al Gore and the Buddhist temple again?
yeah, yes, yes.
I mean, so this is nothing new.
But that's again, there's so many Americans that obviously there's some that are like, oh my god, like how did we let this slip? But then there's some like, oh, but you're telling me that no information was passed on, so we succeeded. Oh, we're fine. No, that's
I
not
mean,
what
what
it
about
is.
the people? So there's another angle here. It's like, what about the people who are like, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with people making friends internationally. This is for the good of humankind.
I mean, if there's nothing nefarious and it's not organized or
But
orchestrated
my
by a foreign
definition of
government,
nefarious is different from most people's, probably because
yeah,
I'm, much more paranoid about these things.
right, right. Um,
That is to say, I examine it from a Clausewitzian point of view. What is political is military. What is military is political, and all of these things can be viewed through a military lens. And then the weaknesses are glaring. But if you
right.
don't have a military lens in your inventory, then you look at all this and say, okay, well, politicians schmooze. That's normal. What's the problem? You don't believe in borders. You don't believe in nation states, right?
Mhm,
And that's the late 20th century neoliberal assumption.
mhm. So to play this game correctly, you have to be suspicious of any sort of interaction, especially when you have an organization like this that has some sort of ties to back home, in this case, back to China. And it appears, as much as we're making fun of the FBI, excuse me, it appears that the FBI at least was keeping tabs on this woman because they were following her around to when she was going to a number of different conferences, even in Washington in 2014, where they also caught her having a sexual encounter with this Ohio mayor who they're not mentioning, which Carl apparently was under FBI surveillance. So they're following certain people around. Again, who knows what the vetting process is. Um, but it is not about that information that you described. They're not getting that. They are getting, you said policy, leverage. I'm going to go the leverage route. I mean, they're both kind of intertwined, but this is leverage for later on. That this is the long game that China is notorious for, and it's what they're doing. They are playing the long game and
Right.
pulling people
So, so,
closer.
so it's just they're collecting, like Pokemon. They're collecting politicians
Hmm.
so that they can use in different situations to solve problems. So
Hmm.
I love the Trump tweet here, though.
I didn't even
Get
get to
down to
read that
that.
part.
I,
No,
scandalous.
I
They let Trump tweet. I thought this would be blocked.
yeah, as the Chamber of Commerce would say, there are just some jobs. Jeez. Oh.
Must
Yeah,
must have slipped
indeed.
that one through. There's not even a warning. There's disinformation. Okay.
And if you take the time to dig on the internet, there's so many photos of her with just like all of these individuals. It's like, holy smokes. I mean, the connections being made. Well, welcome to the game. Welcome to the game of intelligence gathering. Um, and clearly, they're very, very effective at it. And I would venture to say that we play the same game fairly well, but you and I will never hear about it. At least back here in the
Uh,
United
I
States.
I I don't believe we're that competent. And I don't think that's necessarily a failing. I think that's a consequence of having a democracy
Policies.
and not having an authoritarian dictatorship. I think that authoritarian dictatorships tend to be better at these sorts of games.
Squashing your things. Yeah, I can understand that perspective. I just think I mean, we've clearly learned some things from the Cold War. I just hope we haven't lost that
Oh, that man,
sense
that
of.
got thrown by the wayside in the 90s.
I know, but I hope it has come back to some degree.
Uh,
I hope. I know. I hope we're not just relying
I,
on drones
I
flying
used to believe
around.
these things. I used to believe that the United States had
Uh,
like competent people in the upper echelons of the intelligence community. I no longer believe that.
I mean, I hope sometimes when I read Tom Clancy, I'm like, these are competent people. but
Yeah, I wish. I wish what was going on inside there was actually the sort of thing that goes down in a Tom Clancy novel. Well,
but
unfortunately, it is. It's just that Jack Ryan doesn't exist.
right. Okay.
All right.
So,
So what's the question?
oh yeah, sorry. The question. Forgot about that part because I'm just like, my God, this is
Totally
such a
fair. I
vast.
derailed you. You only got
That's
through about half the article.
all right. All right. So I'm going to post the question to you, but I'm going to read it to you first.
Yeah, that's fair.
One. Do you believe that as time goes on, and with the Donald Trump on the way out of office, that we will hear of more allegations of Chinese interference, such as this, and worse in the future? And then B, will the majority of media sources cover it?
Okay. So, will there be further evidence of Chinese interference
Yeah, here I'm gonna send it to
in
you right
U.S.
now.
policy?
There you go. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
it's
let
a
me
two-part question.
copy paste your. Okay.
Save you some typey. Um,
Goodness. All right.
so will we hear more of this as time goes on?
All right. So
Will we find out
here's
more?
your question is, do you believe? Keep my question for later. All right. Will we hear of more allegations? So my response as the cabinet is A, yes. B, no. Well, when you say the majority of media sources, I mean, I'm sure there are like 10 scrappy little, pseudo news programs out there for every one major source. But I am betting that Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, um, Wall Street Journal, will not cover it. It might show up on, I don't know, a footnote in a Wall Street Journal editorial page or in the New York
Hmm.
Post, which has been, just lambasted as completely incredible as a consequence of choosing the wrong stories to report. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is a Washington Post article. And
Mm-hmm.
then your website you've got is what, heavy.com, which is hardly a bastion of right-wing news, but it's not one of the big ones, is it?
No, but at least
This
it's
this
throwing
is on
something against
this
the
is on
wall.
page, I don't know, 34 of the New York Times, right? In a one paragraph little article somewhere.
Right,
There's
right,
probably a little retraction somewhere. That's it.
right.
In fact, the article is probably like about how this didn't happen and how it's a right wing conspiracy theory. And then, like later, a couple weeks, there's like a little retraction printed somewhere in the footnotes.
You're like
And there's
swallow
no
and refuse to
actual
confirm.
discussion of the meat of this.
No, so you're going to go that route.
Yep.
I'm going to say for A, yes. I mean, obviously, definitely yes. And the thing is, I'm going to go against you on B. I'm going to say yes also.
Okay. So you're
Uh,
saying yes, we're going to hear more about problems with China, and yes, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the LA Times will cover it.
and I'm swinging for
Well,
the fences
and
here.
or like Google won't suppress it, and or YouTube won't make it go away. Will these sources be available in parts of the world where China has more influence, or will they just
Okay.
be disappeared on their parts of the internet?
Hey, let's take
How about
baby steps
across
here.
5G
Let's
networks?
let's not talk about what the Chinese are going to be doing. Okay, I'm just talking about here.
Well, I'm just saying is like I don't know how far
It's
their
just going to
reach
be all
goes, but
over.
I'm betting it's farther than you think.
Oh, I'm sure it is farther than I
Like if
want to
they can
think.
compromise as many things as they have, why you don't think they have people at the editorial board of the New York Times? You don't think they
I,
have people at the you know what I'm saying? It's like what did that guy say? We have people everywhere.
hey, I'm using a Lenovo laptop here, and I'm waving at my camera, and I'm sure it's not
Right.
just you looking at me.
Well,
So
I mean that's the like overt spying, right? But I mean, I,
right,
I just think that what's actually happening is so much more subtle, and if you think about it, way more scary. But okay, so
right,
you're saying by the end of 2021, because the
yes,
future is a broad
yes.
time
Let's just
span.
use the 1 year is the easy one, unless we
Yes.
specify. So yes and yes, but real quick on the secondary, yes, the B part. I think that, and again, I'm swinging for the fences here. A lot of our really left wing media sources, I think, are going to start allying themselves a little bit more, maybe with some of the more radical, m- much further left leaning Democrats in certain instances.
Okay,
Once certain
what you're
things,
making like a you're saying that there's like an isolationist I don't know, like United States Socialist Labor Party sort of thing. It almost sounds like I just said National Socialists.
no, like I'm referring to the young up and coming Democrats who are, say, the Squad and that group.
Yeah,
You're
I
going to
put
see
them in like
more of
Jeremy
them.
Corbyn's category. It's about the same thing.
Okay.
This is what I said.
Yeah,
Nazis.
yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Wait, I thought that was apparently supposed to be us.
No, 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 no,
Uh,
no, no. See, you can't spell Nazi without the word socialist.
I'm sorry. Yes, you are right.
So, but if you're what you're saying is that they have national loyalties, national interests, and they want isolationism, and they want
No,
socialism, then you know maybe these are groups that might put pressure against China because it's too internationalist for them.
no.
Okay,
Pressure against people like Nancy Pelosi. A split in the Democratic Party, the young and far more left leaning, and the old and the more right leaning. I mean,
okay.
even if you look at Biden's picks for cabinet, the far left is screaming at the top of their lungs that they've been thrown by the wayside. And I think they're going to find instances here and there where they're going to be really unhappy with what Joe Biden does. And you might
What I'm saying is like,
see,
what does the because when I look at Joe Biden's cabinet, I see a
right.
bunch of globalists.
Yes, you see a bunch of globalists. I think there's
What do
people inside
they
the
What do
Democratic
they
Party that say they're
think?
not globalist enough.
Oh, okay, okay, I see. So you're saying that the AOC wing of the party thinks that we should open up to China so much more than we are.
Oh, they're not going to say that publicly, but probably yes.
Okay.
They're looking at the cabinet picks of Joe Biden and be like, "You are the Diet Coke of what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want more than what you can offer."
Okay. But and consequently, the mainstream media sources are going to report on China's transgressions more.
I think some people inside those places, you're going to see some things come up to try to embarrass the older parts of the establishment. That's again, I'm
Okay, I mean,
swinging for the
it's a
fences. I'm swinging here, Cabinet. I'm
yeah. I mean,
swinging.
it's like a two-pronged attack then, because it's got to because what the accusations would be that the establishment is too soft on China, and that's a
Not
problem for the progressive left. Unless again you're saying that the progressive left is like a Jeremy Corbyn sort of National Socialist Party that is like protect American jobs here,
yes.
and
I mean,
and and,
maybe
and
just a
we
little
need to
bit.
unionize.
I mean,
Like I don't know.
if you're the Chinese, imagine you're like, yes, yes, Joe Biden's resisting us, but there's other ways we can get to you.
All right. I mean
That's
there's
way
too many
out
layers
there.
to delve in there, because you
Uh,
start getting into National Socialism versus internationalist workers' parties and things like that, where you draw those lines, or where those lines are perceived to be.
Listen,
Um,
Babe Ruth struck out a bunch of times, and I might strike out here, but it's worth a shot. So
all
hey,
right. So
if
all I have to say, I mean, that's so complicated. There's so many different theories there, and I don't want to espouse any of them, because even saying it sounds loony. But what I will say is, I do not think the mainstream media sources are going to turn up the heat on Chinese behavior. I think the opposite. I think we're going to have more of exactly what we've got right now, where the what is happening in Hong Kong is being buried.
well, right now they're going to push the idea we need to be friends with China. We need to establish the old norms of
Right,
the
right. Well,
economy.
I think that the mainstream media will continue to do that throughout 2021. So you and I can revisit this
Right?
come
I,
December 2021 and see what has happened.
yeah, but I have a feeling. I have a
All right.
gut feeling. I'm going to go with the gut
I
feeling.
have a gut feeling things will get worse and worse and worse in terms of Chinese aggression, um, soft and otherwise.
Yeah,
But
and Joe
I
Biden's
do
going to have
not
to
think
play.
that will reach the front pages of anything, because I think that they have already won that coup in many ways. All right. That
Go
leads
on.
to my question,
Yes.
which is that more and more capitalist organizations that should be, in the Americans' mind, apolitical and just out for money, are behaving in ways that put the screws to people, in order to require that everybody's story matches in a very um, creepy 1984 sort of way. In a
Mm,
Stalinist regime sort of way, it's like, oh, your story is out of line. Well, you better watch yourself.
mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing this like bleed into other areas. So what I saw this week, and I watch a lot of tech channels,
Mm-hmm.
and you may not be familiar. I'm going to share my screen real quick here and show you some pictures, um, just so you have some frame of reference. So I think you can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so RTX is a technology. In short, I'm into graphics and video games and stuff like that. I build
Mm-hmm.
and maintenance computers. And RTX is a technology that allows for light within a virtual 3D environment, a digital 3D environment like you would find in most video games,
Mm-hmm.
to be simulated more accurately. But traditionally, it's something reserved for animation, that is like pre-rendered cutscenes and things like that, because it's actually a really burdening process, and unless you've got a lot of firepower in terms of either graphics processing cores or CPUs, depending on the algorithm you're using to generate the image,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just not practical for real time effects, where you need 30 images at minimum generated every second in order to give people the impression of motion. Right? Nobody wants to play a slideshow. Everybody's had that stuttering experience with a computer or a console that just couldn't quite handle the game, whether the game was poorly optimized or the game was just too heavy for it, too modern for it. So RTX is a technology that there are two companies that make graphics cards. One is NVIDIA, the other is AMD. AMD also makes computer processors, which are like graphics cards, but not the same thing, and they compete with Intel there. But in graphics cards, they compete with NVIDIA. So there's like three companies, one that makes both, one that makes just CPUs, that's Intel, and one that makes graphics cards, that's NVIDIA. But they all have their hands in each other's pockets, and they're all working with each other in different ways, and there's lots of accusations that they collude more than is healthy for a free market. But setting all that aside, so just to point out, I'm not coming down in favor of one of these companies against another. I think they all engage in some of this sliminess. Anyway, this is a great technology that NVIDIA has brought forward. The first generation was not so great. It wasn't quite playable under most circumstances for most people. Most people couldn't even afford one of these things. It did drive up the costs. It limited supply of the other sorts of cards available. It divided the industry a lot on what to, how to optimize the game or what to optimize it for. And NVIDIA was basically just saying, if you don't include this technology in your brand new hotness, your new AAA game that's going to come out in the holiday season, then you're going to be behind. And wouldn't you like our engineers to come over and show you how to optimize it for our graphics cards? And of course, that is a direct effort to control the market or to drive up prices.
Push.
Now, to be fair, like a technology is being offered. You can see that with the RTX on, the motion blur on that hand is more realistic. You can see that the street lights are a little more crisp. There are some things happening here that you would normally not get in a real-time environment in a video game. And with the second generation, it's actually playable for some people with really expensive hardware, even at 4K resolution. Right. But it does cost. It costs about half. So if you turn this feature on, you're going to see your frame rate drop to half what it was.
Right.
For most gamers, that's too high a cost. So anyway, there's a reviewer out there. He's Hardware Unboxed. He's been doing, reviews for years. He's one of the bigger names out there. I would say not quite as big as like Linus Tech Tips or Gamers Nexus, but maybe, I don't know how many followers Hardware Canucks has, but he's somewhere in like the top 5 YouTube channels for sure. And he started with unboxing videos, so he's a little small, scrappy guy. He grew big. Well, these companies, they hand out equipment for review, right? And the reviewer gets the equipment for free, and they get it early, but there's a social compact there. There's an expectation, well, this guy has 1 million viewers, I'd benefit if he looks at my product and shows it off just before release, and probably has some good things to say about it. But people, here's the thing that NVIDIA doesn't seem to understand at the moment. People watch that reviewer because they trust him to tell them what is in their interest.
Right.
So, by the way, with this image, the ray tracing on is on the left-hand side, and you can see that there's a higher contrast. And they, right. So, if the reviewer just says that their stuff never stinks and it's always amazing, well, he's going to lose credibility. He's going to lose followers. It's not going to be as valuable. But they don't seem. Anyway, I'm going to show you the letter they sent this poor guy because, I'm sure that he's not been a perfect angel in all cases, or I'm sure that his review has some bias or some opinion, but that's why there are multiple reviewers.
Right.
There's not a government agency telling you which video card to buy, thank God. There's a plethora of opinions, and a lot of these reviewers are very rigorous in at least showing where their biases are and showing where they're coming from and providing tests, and they're showing you the test environment, and they're telling you any issues they had with the test bench. I mean, these guys, they don't get 1 million viewers for nothing, right? Anyway, he was a little critical of the RTX technology on some of these cards, and he was just saying, hey, look, I'm going to continue to focus on how these cards perform with the feature off. And sometimes I'll show you what it does with the feature on, but he was saying, I think for the bulk of people buying these products that having this feature on is unrealistic price expectation. I think it prices a lot of people out of the market. I think he was right. And it was right for me. I mean, I don't buy video cards that often, but what's more is I don't like to spend as much as NVIDIA would like me to spend on a new one.
Right.
So anyway, here is the letter that they sent, and tell me that this doesn't sound the way that that authoritarian dictatorships have tried to strong arm people in the past.
Okay.
And this is coming from a company to an independent reviewer.
Right.
Hi, Steve. We've reached a critical juncture in the adoption of ray tracing, and it has gained industry-wide support from top titles, developers, game engines, API, consoles, and GPU. Okay, industry-wide is a little broad, but it has gotten support, from, you could probably count less than 100, but some major titles and some major pieces of hardware in recent years.
Big move.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has changed the industry in some ways, but I would not say that it is widely adopted. Far from it.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, NVIDIA is all in for ray tracing. Ray tracing is important and core to the future of gaming, but it is also part of our focused R&D efforts on revolutionizing video games and creating a better experience for gamers. Okay, so this sounds like their press release.
Mm-hmm.
Gets the point. This philosophy is also reflected in developing technologies such as DLSS. By the way, he had good things to say about DLSS.
Mm-hmm.
He was critical of it when it first came out, and you know that brand new technologies have teething issues, and he's talking about what's beneficial to the consumer in the moment.
Right. Right.
And the first generation of a technology is not the one you want to buy in on usually.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. But he was very generous about the second generation of DLSS. He said, yeah, turn this on. It's great. If you have an NVIDIA card, you should turn it on because you can turn down your resolution and get the same results, which means you get better frame rates for the same image. Of course you would turn it on. It's a post-processing technology developed. Reflex and broadcast are not that important, by the way. That offer immense value to our customers who are purchasing a GPU. They don't get free GPUs. They work hard for their money, and they keep their GPUs for multiple years. This is NVIDIA telling that to the reviewer.
Telling that to the people using your stuff.
Right. Basically saying, well, you're getting this for free. You don't know what value is. It's like,
right,
but he
right.
answers to your customers like, okay. Despite all this progress, your GPU reviews and recommendations have continued to focus singularly on rasterization performance, and you have largely discounted all the other technologies we offer to gamers. Okay, but your main competitor's card, AMD, for at least 2 years did not offer ray tracing. So in order to get a vanilla apples-to-apples comparison of the performance of the cards, all other things being equal, and ray tracing being something maybe most people can't afford, because it did drive up the cost of your cards. Anyway. It is very clear from your community commentary that you do not see things the way that we, gamers, and the rest of the industry do. Our founders, editors, editions boards, and that is to say, they put out a vanilla version of the card, which aftermarket modifications are expected to be made to by companies like MSI and Gigabyte and so forth.
Yeah.
Our Founders Edition boards and other NVIDIA products are being allocated to media outlets that recognize the changing landscape of gaming and the features that are important to gamers and anyone else buying a GPU today, be it for gaming, content creation, or studio and streaming. Hardware Unboxed, that's this guy's YouTube channel, should continue to work with our adding card partners to secure GPUs for review. Of course, you will still have access to obtain pre-release drivers and press materials. That won't change. We are open to revisiting this in the future should your editorial direction change. I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's interesting that this switch has finally occurred in my mind. I mean, I am no stranger to watching reviews of games. I mean, if there's a game that I know I don't have the platform to play or the time, I watch certain individuals and I watch their walkthroughs because it's entertaining. I like the stories, but it's also interesting to see like, oh wow, look at the graphics direction that this group went versus this one, because you see that gradual
I've been
change.
watching Razorfist play Cyberpunk. It's a blast because I don't have time or money
Right.
to set it up for myself. I'm going to do that maybe in February, and I'm seeing, yes, I made the right decision. It's still got teething issues, as it were.
Right. Oh yeah.
These people provide value and they generate goodwill towards your product generally.
But they are now the ones that have taken over completely for the PR campaign. I mean, think of it this way: when a game used to come out, say 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there was always like IGN, was it IGN, or there was a
Yep,
few major
IGN was
industries,
yeah, and before them it was PC
PC
Gaming
Gamer,
Magazine and Computer Gaming World. Yeah, PC
you,
Gamer Magazine
right?
and Computer Gaming World,
You
and
would
they
watch
were
their
yep.
reviews, and now that switch has occurred. So now it is these independent creators that are getting, I don't know if they're getting a kickback, but they're getting all this
Well, there's
content
certainly
earlier.
what they're getting is the implicit deal is these big companies who know that these guys have a million or more people following them, or hundreds of thousands in some cases, will send them the product a little bit ahead of time. There will be
Yes.
an embargo, which is debated about how sleazy that is at times, or the conditions on the embargo. But it's usually like you can't announce the information until this date or until the product actually comes out. So
Hmm.
you can't like say things about the product before the day of, but you have a week ahead of time, maybe 2 weeks to test it out and get all your ducks in a row for your review, and then
Right.
you're allowed to release your review on this day. And of course you don't want to be late because the other reviewers will beat you to the punch and people go to their sites. So you have an
Hmm.
incentive to do it on time. And what the deal is, this guy's gonna make your, if it's a good product, this guy's gonna make your product look good and generate a lot of buzz around it. So he's it's free PR for them. Well, free. They send the guy $1,000 video card. They
Hmm.
make video cards, right? It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like they buy a Jaguar and send it to him, right? They send him something off their factory line, maybe modified a little bit for the reviewer. That's a whole other questionable practice, but
Hmm.
or arguably, it's just like the one they had, and they made a few more tweaks before they released it, and that's more understandable.
Right.
But all of this is in good faith.
Not good faith anymore. Not
Well, I mean,
those days are
if you're going to
gone.
tell somebody what they have to say about your product,
That's where we are. That's that is. I mean, the director of global PR.
yeah,
They
well,
don't even need to
so
run their own global
Brian Del
campaigns anymore.
Rizzo, I understand if they fire him or threaten to cut off his I don't know, access or whatever. He works for them. This guy does not work for Nvidia. This guy receives $1,000 video card, and he makes more than that in a 2 minute ad selling, I don't know,
Yeah.
selling World of Warships, or selling a
Whatever.
mouse, or selling,
Right.
like this is, other companies pay him to shill. Maybe sometimes you pay him to shill, but
Right.
he shills, and his massive YouTube audience, um, they generate his, they put meat on his table.
Hmm.
They put a roof over his head. You have a product that you benefit from him reviewing, because whatever he is reviewing, 500,000 people are going to watch it. And if he doesn't have your product review, he'll wait and he'll compare it with your competitor will send him a product review, and he'll compare it with yours when yours comes out in 2 weeks. And his
Hmm.
review will be late. But his, you know, the value he creates far exceeds the, what you think he's an employee because you sent him a free product?
That's how they want to treat him, because they know that he's going to thrive off getting that card soon and being able to be one of the first few people to review a game or review a product, hardware, whatever it may be, so
Right,
they
he
can
thrives,
cut
but
him out of
they
that pool.
thrive. Like they want to kill the golden goose.
But you're a dime a dozen.
Oh,
That's how they could see it as, right?
yeah.
That's
Well,
that's the way they're going to
but
go
what I'm
about it, which is
saying is,
dumb. Which
but
is
it's
dumb.
so short-sighted,
It is.
because if all they have doing reviews are people who never say their shit stinks, people who want to pretend that they fart rainbows,
Right. I
those
mean,
people won't be trusted, and they won't
right.
have 500,000 followers. The reason this guy has 500,000 followers, or whatever Hardware Unboxed has, I think it's like 700,000, is because the people watching trust him to provide honest information about the product.
Right.
and probably some entertainment along the way. I doubt he's entirely a dime a dozen. I bet he's a little more, uh, lively, and has a bit more of a. Uh, let's see, I don't even have the word, an extemporaneous capability than I have.
The ability to draw people in an entertaining fashion.
Yeah, I bet he's charismatic.
I'm sure he is, or just entertaining to watch. I like to watch the Rad Brad,
Right.
and the funny thing about him is like he sometimes he's horrible, like when he's playing a game because he misses the most obvious things, but just the entertaining factor of watching the guy try to figure it out, like no, you're doing it wrong, but it's so funny. But
It's just chilling to read that and think that they really can get away with that. And if that becomes true, I'm terrified. So here's my question.
go ahead.
My question is, will Nvidia back down, or will they double down on this sort of behavior?
I think they're going to double down on this sort of behavior, and I don't like to say that. And what's sad to me, first off, when I said like that guy's a dime a dozen, that's me speaking as if I am the mind of Nvidia and how they view it. Clearly, this is the route they want to go. And I wanted to mention, like, imagine if you went the other route.
Okay, but
Imagine if you
it's
had a
also
representative.
worth noting, like, 5 of the other biggest tech channels came out this week and read this letter on their channels
Right.
and said, "What the heck." You know what I mean? Like,
I,
so Linus came out and did this, and Hardware Canucks and Gamers Nexus came out and said, like, "Hey, what the heck?"
I still think they're going to double down.
Wow.
I think that's the age that we
How
are
many
in.
followers does Linus have?
Quite a few, but how many? Who is? And I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you: who is Nvidia's biggest competition?
It's with a heavy heart.
Um, Arguably AMD.
I was going to say AMD.
Okay.
So when you're the only two
Well,
choices
yeah.
to pick
So
from,
that's the scariest follow up question. Is, and will others also begin to behave this way?
right?
So like, will AMD also behave this way? Will those partners that have been referenced to MSI and Gigabyte and
Right.
Asus begin behaving this way?
I'm going to say, see, in this, I think at times they will, but in this instance, clearly this is a slip up by the Nvidia team that AMD should capitalize on. But
Right.
because of this particular industry, and there's really only two main leaders, at least on our side of the planet here in North America, for a certain set number of years, AMD's on top,
Right.
and
So,
then
so, so
Nvidia
Linus
comes
has
out with something
three and a half
else.
million subscribers for reference.
Okay. I just I can't. I mean, I'm with you in your corner when you say like this is so short-sighted because can you imagine if you went the other direction and let's say this person said something, right? And you're there like, "Oh man, he makes some really good points." We're kind of or some people are like, "Oh, we're angry." Well, how about we send a team of like two or three people
Yep.
and we do a video of us sitting in like his house with him. You're like, "What would you do? What do you like and what don't you like?" Because that is the ultimate form of
Right.
PR
I
and it
mean,
is so cheap.
he provided graphs and charts. The other thing is, like, some of the charts he provided actually made them look good, made them look
Right.
better than they would otherwise have looked. Like, he did some apples to oranges comparison that ran in their favor and said, "Hey, look, if you really like oranges,
Haha.
like, here's how it compares to the apple." Which is like almost dishonest in their favor. But
Right.
it's like the truth is he's not dishonest. He just creates a lot of content, and some of the content he creates doesn't happen to favor their product in a very, very, like, weirdly enough, with those two companies, it is a very competitive environment. Now, some things about it aren't as competitive as I would like as a consumer, but
Hmm.
in certain spheres it is. I don't know. It's just crazy. Here's the other thing that's crazy. When they say that, like, the entire industry has gone our way, um, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox both use AMD, and neither support real-time ray tracing. So the de facto gaming box for most people, let's be honest, I'm all, PC elitist, but that's not the bulk of the market.
Right.
It's a far cry from it, and most of these people are not going to be turning this feature on.
Let
And
me
so,
ask you something.
yeah, go ahead.
As someone who doesn't know obviously as much as you do about this, um, with AMD and Nvidia, they're obviously also making a really big push to VR as well as self-driving vehicles and things of that nature. Could this also be sort of a knock to try to advance those programs? Like, do they see this person saying what he's saying as a threat to possibly those parts of their business
Um,
models? I just
well, okay, so self-driving cars are definitely not quite their wheelhouse. Um, that's
I
really
mean
more
the
like Qualcomm because those are going to be run on cell phones, I think.
Yeah, but I mean
Um,
the actual video, like the video card itself in the vehicles, or is that am I really off? Is what I'm
uh,
saying. Like for the
that's just
monitors.
a CCTV. That's just a camera.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
there's nothing that crazy going on. I mean
Okay.
potentially. Um, what was the other one? The other one was VR. VR might be more them.
Right.
Um, but even that is like they're just making the thing that pushes the pixels, not the thing that interprets the pixels, right?
Okay.
So they're not like
Okay.
Oculus or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
but I think it is a test to say like, hey, we're pushing these new technologies down down your throat basically, and if you don't want to come along for this glorious ride we've created, well then you get to be banished from the conversation.
Right. It is the Republican and Democratic Party in a nutshell of video cards.
Well, so that's the other thing is like these people are apolitical and bless them. I don't want to turn on YouTube and watch a video card review and have the guy identify his political party.
Oh yeah,
I don't.
I'm not saying it like
I,
that.
I mean, and this is like I really enjoy Louis Rossman, but I
Yeah.
love that he got pushed into the political arrangement because New York City's government is terrible.
Right.
Right?
I'm
It's
saying if
not
you're
because he wanted to talk about politics. He's a guy who likes to take apart circuits and he likes to like prove that, Apple's security isn't quite as good as they say it is or whatever. Like he's just a smart guy who's willing to do repairs. He got pushed into the political arena in recent
Mhm.
years, and it's almost sad for me to see him have to take political stances on things because it came where he lived.
Yeah.
And this is I think another place where this is going to become very political, and these guys who are just experts in their fields, who are just reviewing things, who happen to be experts in certain areas, like these guys are experts on benchmarks. They know, hey, if I put this device in this board, in this computer, with this cooling arrangement, I'm probably going to get that frame rate in Y game. And
Right.
and like that they know that because they do it so much, they know instinctively what's going to be competitive and what isn't, and their advice is valuable. And because they're experts on that, when their truth doesn't match the official party line, they're going to be um, disappeared. And then, sadly for them, they're going to become political.
Hmm. And I'm not trying to say it is political. I was saying like, oh, you have two choices. You're down to two. You either pick
Oh,
AMD
oh,
or
oh!
you
I
pick
see. I
us.
see. AMD, Nvidia. I don't know. Like AMD,
So,
this is not just about Nvidia, right? Like Nvidia is kind of perceived as like the empire because they've had so much, power for
around
so
for so
long.
long.
They've been, sort of. They've always had that tagline. It's like the way it's meant to be played. Well, part of what Nvidia does is they do sort of go into these studios and say, well, we'll give you exclusive access to our engineers' drivers if you add these features to your game, which only our card supports.
Haha.
Right? And then it's like the game comes out and it runs 20% better on NVIDIA. I wonder why. These cards are mathematically the same in terms of the amount of pixels they're pushing or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's like some of it's, there's some truth to some of those features are really valuable, but there's a slimy side for sure.
Hmm.
That AMD is not above it. And they really disrupted the market a couple of years back, and they're continuing to be a disruptive force for Intel
Hmm.
because they stole a march on Intel while Intel had gotten sort of comfortable, incrementally improving performance and keeping the prices the same.
Right.
But now that they've successfully stolen that march, you're starting to watch like, well, their prices are creeping up too,
Right.
because that's the nature of the game.
Right.
So I don't view one of these guys as like the plucky little republic. I view these reviewers as the plucky little republic, if anything.
Right. All right. All right. Wow. Yeah.
I guess that's a lot. So I've got your answer is NVIDIA will double down, and maybe
Yes.
others will follow their practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll limit my question to 2021.
Okay. I mean, that's the golden standard for us at
Yes.
this point.
And so my answer, you may have already seen it on the screen, they will make some conciliatory noises, but continue this practice, and others will follow suit. So it's probably,
Yeah.
in any case.
Bad news.
I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to go to our handbook for the end of the podcast. We've run a little long, and I mucked up the recording in the middle, so this will go out in 2 parts, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're up to Epictetus number 5.
Yes.
He says, men are not disturbed by things, but by the views which they take of things. Thus death is nothing terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When therefore we are hindered or disturbed or grieved, let us never impute it to others, but to ourselves, that is, to our own views. It is the action of an uninstructed person to reproach others for his own misfortunes, of one entering upon instruction to reproach himself, and one perfectly instructed to reproach neither others nor himself. Because it's misfortune, it's something you can't control.
Right. He had mentioned this before, things that are out of your control, to dwell upon them is frivolous. It's a waste of time.
Yep, and that's basically the Stoic philosophy. I would maybe take issue with a little bit of this where he says, well, I think it could be misinterpreted to mean that you should never reproach anyone or yourself, and I disagree with that. I think there are things worth reproaching. The trick is determining what's under your control and what isn't.
Right.
So,
right.
But certainly that being upset over things is not a reason for reproach, right? It's just like, okay, that's a feeling. Now, is something actually controllable here that can be adjusted to improve things or not? And am I upset over something that is fine the way it is?
Right.
So that's it for this Chabinet meeting.
Yes, it is. The last part is always humbling, and yes, we'll have to keep an eye on these things and see where they go. But in the meantime, we'll see what news turns. But right now, I again have no gavel, as we probably won't ever get one.
We will, however, adjourn.
Yes, indeed, we will. Have a good one, and we'll see all of you guys next time when we discuss more things.